Hey everybody, and welcome to Swoop Podcast with your hosts Josh Sanchez and Dante Fantuzzi. Man, oh man, oh man, Dante. I know we've been waiting to do this podcast. It's long overdue. What's going on? How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling blessed, brother. Another day of life. God gave me another one, so let's get back on popping, brother. And I'm blessed to be back here on Swoop Podcast with my boy, man.
I love it, man. And I will say, man, I've really enjoyed, despite the Sixers, and we'll get into the Sixers in a little bit. I will say it's great to be back, man, doing podcasts with you, bro. And like you said, blessed, to live another day and continue to push. And that's one thing about Philly sports. This is one thing that'll never die, right? So, and I think to start our podcast right away, we really have to get into it, because I know we've been kind of beating around the bush, but we gotta we created podcasts after we won really quick. So now that we lose, we also got to keep that same energy. So I just think to start off our podcast, bro, would you like to talk about game 6 first? Would you like to talk about game 7 first with the Sixers? What game would you like to talk about first?
I guess we got to go on How you say that word? No, numerological.
Oh man, I think I'm getting stuck with it too. New, I know what you mean though. We're gonna go and just number
Well,
order.
we gotta go in number order with this one. Game 6, man. It looked like it was done. It looked like it was gift wrapped to the Sixers to win. Boston couldn't stop us. Tatum couldn't make a jump shot if he couldn't throw a rock in the water going into game 6. Um, then it just all changed like the flip of a switch. Sixers are up 83-81. They couldn't pull it off. They couldn't pull away. It was your classic choke job by the Philadelphia 76ers. Again, as I emphasize, again, by your Philadelphia 76ers. Boston gave you that game to win. That was your best. That was the game to win. Game 6 was there for you. You're up late in the fourth quarter. A little bit under 7 minutes, 6 minutes left to go in the game. And your two superstars just couldn't get it done. Tobias Harris 1 for 7, 2 points. Where was Tobias at? I love Tobias. I think Tobias in all of this has flown under the radar as far as appreciation. Nobody's, excuse me, including me. As far as appreciation went, man, Tobias flew under the radar, and when I say that, I mean Tobias literally had to change his game again. Tobias had to literally change his role. I mean, Tobias is not a 3; he's a 4. He's a stretch 4. That's where he's best suited. And at the beginning of the season, for the Sixers to go and get PJ Tucker to put him into the starting rotation, and then ask Tobias to basically change his role. And I mean, that's hard to do, and I'm pretty sure he didn't want to do it, but he had no other choice. But again, going back to saying game 6, I mean, you can't have that from your number 3 option. Or 4, whatever, however you want to label it, as Maxi 3 or Tobias 3. But 1 for 7, 2 points, and then your two superstars just couldn't get anything going. I mean, James Harden dribble, turnover, dribble, forced up jump shots. Embiid didn't touch the ball within the last 5 minutes of the game. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then when you fast forward to game 7, Boston was just on it. Let me reiterate that Boston got on it after that technical foul. That flagrant foul, I should say. The Sixers, well, they were up 12 in the second quarter. They cut it to 9, and then you get that flagrant foul on Harden, which by all means to me was a bad call on the ref. But like they said, you see blood, they're gonna call it a flagrant. That just sparked up Boston, man. And then you just seen it early on. I mean, Embiid reverted back. I mean, where was the MVP Joel Embiid at when you needed him most? Where's the 10-time All-Star? However many MVPs James Harden has. I mean, where was that at? You guys didn't show up. Like, you guys just quit. You guys just quit on the team. quit on Doc Rivers, just gave up, didn't care. And then you're forced with Tobias and Maxey and PJ, out of all players, PJ, to try and fight for you. I mean, it's easy to face. It's easy to face. Let's just face it. Embiid's not a leader. James Harden isn't a leader. Neither one of them can grab the bull by the horns and just take a game over. They just can't do it. So, I mean, I know I have much more to say, but just a quick emphasis and a quick summary of what I got to say. Josh, what are your thoughts on Game 6 and Game 7?
Yeah, well, one, I just want to say it's so crazy how things in sports can change so quickly. I remember the last time me and you recorded, like the Sixers did something that they did not do since 2001, where a series is tied 2-2. They go on the road and win Game 5 and win Game 5 convincingly. Embiid was dominant from start to finish. The Sixers dictated the pace of play, and our podcast was excellent. We had great spirits. Me and you were definitely realistic, though. We were nervous about Game 6 because Game 6 was going to be telling of this team. But it just shows you again just how quickly things can change. And when things go south, you need your best players to step up. In Game 4, when things went south, we lost Games 2 and in Games 3. Our big two, Embiid and Harden, combined for 77 points in Game 4. And they rose up to the occasion and they stepped up when the team needed them the most. And then we had the momentum back. Then, like you said, Game 6 comes. Jason Tatum played horribly. I believe he was like one of his first 15 shots. You can't get an even worse game from the Boston Celtics' best player. The game was there for you to win. That was the moment where it was time for Harden and Embiid, who, they might not have had their best nights, but at least, give that final push, that championship level push. And that is something we've been talking about this team. A lot of people have been mentioning this team has been different. And when they had a chance to give out the championship knockout blow, no one showed up. And first, I got to put the blame on Embiid because he is the leader of this team, number one. Yes, we know, James Harden and his failures, and I know he has the ball most in his hands. He's also going to deserve a lot of the blame too. But this series, it was really discouraging. This is the first time, I believe, as my tenure as a Sixers fan, I'm actually looking at Embiid and I'm questioning, does he have the true leadership it takes to get over the hump? Because there's a lot of great players. Kevin Durant is a great player. Carmelo Anthony is an all-time great player. But these are guys, right, that, they're great players. But in order to be a championship level player, we got to question their leadership. You got to have that true leader. And that is something that we thought we had with this team with Embiid. And this series just shows you again, and it puts that into question. Because Game 6, that once that clear path foul happened, all the momentum was in the Sixers' way. The Sixers had the lead. Niang hit you. Finally, some role players hit you some timely threes. Now's your moment, Joel. Now's your moment, Harden. Let's go. And the fact that Embiid did not get the ball, part of that you can say is on Harden because he is our main ball handler. But also another part of it is also Embiid too. You got to demand the ball. You got to want the ball. And I think that is something too where those two go hand in hand. They lose Game 6. I did not have as much faith in Game 7 just because of the way they lost Game 6. Boston played probably one of their worst games of the series. Yeah, they hit 15 threes, but we held them to under 100 points. Boston has been the best offensive team all season. When you get them under 100 points, you got to take advantage. And the Sixers just did not get it done. The fact that they were aligned, there was a sequence, right, in Game 6. Maxey gets the clear path foul. Sixers are up 2. Boston turns the ball over. Melton's wide open for 3, misses. Melton missed 3 straight wide open threes. And I understand Melton should have made at least one of those, but this is where you need to deliver the knockout punch. I would have rather have saw Harden or Embiid try to drive it down low to get a foul, or, to like just take it up strong than to kick it out. Because if you could see from Melton's first jumper, he didn't have it. Like, he was giving you great defense, but the fact that you're relying on him and these role players to hit these timely shots, like, I understand, like, they probably could have made one of those, and I believe that would have changed everything. But you live and die with your stars at the end of the day. So the fact that the Sixers went 4 minutes in Game 6 scoreless, Tatum, who had a terrible night, rose to the occasion. And whether or not like you want to say how bad Tatum has been in this series, and he is on a very nice team. His team is stacked. But one thing I will say about Jason Tatum, when it's time to deliver, he has delivered time and time again. There's a stat, I looked at it over Twitter. Jason Tatum, I believe, has the most like clutch baskets over the past like 4 or 5 years, and the best field goal percentage in go-ahead buckets. He's shooting like 33%, which is way higher than the next best superstar, because those are when the moments, right, it's time for you to take over. And that is something that was the difference in this series. Jason Tatum in Game 6 had a terrible shooting night. It doesn't matter. I'm going to keep shooting, and that's exactly what happened. James Harden, when he has a bad shooting night, he goes ghost. You don't know where he's at. And the same thing goes with Embiid from time to time too. And I know it's harder to get the center the ball, but eventually your best players need to demand the ball and get the ball. I would have rather seen Embiid in Game 6 and in Game 7 go 11 of 30 than to, go 5 of 18 and taking 4 3-point shots in Game 7 and to only take 18 shots in Game 6. Like, you need to go out. If you're going to go out, you're going out with your best player. Like, even when I don't want to get too sidetracked, but even when like Oklahoma City, they lost to the Warriors that one year, KD took 30 shots in Game 6. Like, at least, like he was taking the shots. And that is something where this is going to be a big offseason for Embiid. It's going to be another big wake-up call. We thought the Raptor series would have been enough, but it might not be. Because one of the things that I will say was very concerning was in Game 7, they gave up, flat out gave up. I agree with you, Dante. We lost the game when James Harden had an easy layup. It would have put the Sixers back up 10 because Boston had another turnover. He loses the ball, and instead of, going up strong, he wants to flail his body for contact like he always does, flails his body, hits Jaylen Brown in the face. Whether you want to say it's a flagrant or not, I understand. But the fact that he drew blood, there's kind of evidence there to say, like, yeah, that was unnecessary. That changed the whole momentum of the game. And then also freaking George Niang grabbing Jaylen Brown's thigh.
Clank, clank, Niang.
You have those two plays happen in a 2-minute span in Game 7. All momentum is lost. Now you just woke up Boston. Boston's fired up. Now the crowd's is with them. And because they were very quiet in the beginning of that game. And there you go. That was pretty much ball game. And the thing that, again, is really concerning is the lack of competition, the lack of response from your two best players. Jason Tatum, I get it. Like, he was on fire, nuclear in Game 7. But, as the other star player, you got to match them shot for shot. You got to demand the ball and let's go. And the fact that Embiid and Harden ran away from the moment is a big concern. I'm not surprised with James Harden because he's had a history of doing this. And I know him and Doc Rivers have had their ups and downs this season. And he's had problems quitting on coaches in the past. But for Embiid to do it, that's a major concern for me. And then his post-game press conferences, I know people have been taking little quotes from him, but his comment about him and James, they need others to step up. Game 7 in particular, the loss was on him and Harden. PJ Tucker gave you his career high. Tobias Harris ended up giving you 15 points when it mattered. He finished with 19. Maxey gave you some points early, but your role players are going to match the stars' energy. And when you have your two stars not want to show up, the team's going to follow that. That's the whole point of being in a team. You have your leaders. And it's just crazy to see how things have drastically turned, because in game 5, you saw those extra hustle plays. Embiid's chase down block on Jaylen Brown in game 5. Like, that was something where he turned it over, and you know what? He sprinted back and blocked the shot. And it's like, that's what makes this more frustrating, is that, they showed flashes of it in game 5 of what this team is capable of. But then to wet the bed game 6 and in game 7 the way that they did, it's a complete 180 from what this team has shown during this series. And as a Sixers fan, I am really concerned with the leadership aspect of this team, because that's something you don't teach. It's either you have it or you don't. Like, we see it with the Eagles with Jalen Hurts. He has it. He has that mentality, and the team has now built a culture around that. And that's something we got to question. So I know I talked a lot, Dante. I want to give you any chances or anything I missed, or there's anything you would like to add. But man, it definitely was very frustrating these past couple games.
Well, yeah, of course it's going to be frustrating, but this is where I'm going to take some of what you said and just add on to it. There is no leader on the team. We all thought there was a leader in Joel Embiid. He's not a leader. You seen it early in Game 7. He didn't feel, I guess, not mature, but okay enough to want to put Horford on the block. I mean, how many times did we see him get the ball in the paint and he passed it back out? Or he got it, looked at Horford, passed it back out, or passed open shots that he would normally take, or back Horford down, or size him up and pull that little 15 footer jump shot that he likes to take. That's automatic. We seen that early. He just wasn't mentally prepared from the looks of it, and that's not a leader. A leader doesn't do half the things that Embiid does as far as Game 7 won. And that's something we all, like you said, that's all something we have to question. James Harden too. I mean, James Harden, how long have you been in the league for? 13, 14 years, however long you've been in the league. What was that? Your Game 7 against Boston was pathetic. You literally, like you said, Josh, you literally drove to the basket, and instead of just trying to lay the ball up, you flailed, you let Brown strip you, or not even strip you, you just lost possession of the ball, flail your arms, and you pop Jaylen Brown in the mix of it. I mean, where are you mentally? And being in the league for so long, playing basketball all your life, at what point does common sense and common basketball IQ set in for you? I mean, Doc Rivers got fired today. It's kind of sort of breaking news if you haven't seen it already, but Doc Rivers got fired today, and I'm sorry. As far as blame goes, I got to put maybe 10% of the blame on Doc Rivers. Most of my blame goes on James Harden and Joel Embiid. Your superstar players didn't step up. Your big max contract players didn't step up. It's that simple. They choked. James Harden, Joel Embiid choked. And this Game 7 here was an organization. To me, it was an organization defying game. And I'm in support of a tear down here. I'm in support of getting rid of 4 of your 5 starters. And you may just have to build this thing around Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey may not be a number 1. He may not be superstar talent, but Tyrese Maxey is all-star talent. And Tyrese Maxey can help a superstar. And Doc Rivers was step 1 of the process. And just to go back, I give about 10% of the blame to Doc, the rest of it on Joel Embiid and James Harden. As far as Doc goes, I don't think he had a bad series. I don't think he coached bad this year at all. And Game 6 and Game 7, I mean, how much of the blame can you put on Doc Rivers? Doc Rivers got your players wide open shots. Albeit the one thing I will disagree with Doc Rivers was when Game 6 comes, Boston goes with a bigger lineup. They take Derek White out the lineup and they put in Robert Williams. I can't have that. Because we all knew what that was for. That's to slow down Embiid. That's to slow down the pick and roll that Joel Embiid and James Harden had so much success with. That point there, I have to take PJ Tucker out the starting five and play small ball. We seen it early in Game 7. Robert Williams didn't respect no PJ Tucker in the corner. Granted, PJ Tucker hit 3 of them. I think he ended 2. I know he might have finished the first quarter with 11 points, 3 threes, and a layup. So Robert Williams didn't respect it. PJ Tucker made him pay, but Robert Williams didn't respect that. And I don't blame him. I mean, I'm not respecting that corner 3 by PJ Tucker. So at that point, I have to go small ball, and that's the only disagreement I have with Doc Rivers. Is you didn't go small ball. When Boston figured out your pick and roll, you didn't adjust to it. So, and you didn't go back to, well, you kind of sort of did, but you didn't fully incorporate it into the having Tyrese Maxey bring the ball to half court and then let James Harden get the ball and work your magic from there. But all in all, 10% of the blame goes on Doc. The rest of it goes on Joel Embiid, James Harden. Game 7, that's where your superstars show up. And the Sixers superstars didn't show up. Boston's did. And that's the reason why Boston moved on to the Eastern Conference Finals. And late in the fourth quarter in Game 6, your superstars didn't show up. Boston's did. So that's the reason why they forced the Game 7, won the series, and now they're playing Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Philly doesn't have a man in the room. Philly doesn't have a leader or man in the room. They don't have somebody to grab the bull by the horns. And you can sit there and say, oh, PJ Tucker's a tough guy. Yeah, okay, cool. But he ain't going to grab the bull by the horns and go and close the game out for you. He's not the one that's going to rally the troops and say, get on my back, let's go. That's not PJ. So, by all means, Josh, whatever you want to add on to that, brother.
Yeah, I will say, like, I do think, like, when we recorded our podcast in Game 5, like, PJ Tucker, his role is to, be the energy guy, to, like, to get the players, energized and ready to go. But his role is not, like you said, to, like, put the team on his back. That role is for Joel Embiid. And this has been a common theme during this era, this process era. And I will say, I think it's very reciprocal, to see how Sunday was the 10-year anniversary of when the Sixers hired Sam Hinkie after a Game 7 loss to Boston in the same exact place. And this just shows you again that one of the problems, and there's been a lot of issues during this process era, but I think the biggest problem is when you tell people that you're going to lose on purpose, that develops a losing culture, a losing mentality. And I think this is something that, although in theory, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, you lose, you get your star players. But the problem with that, though, is, right, like, we need to continue to instill that winning culture. And now during this Embiid era, whether you like to admit it or not, he is now 0-3 in Game 7s. Yes, the Kawhi shot came down to the wire. You had a Game 7 at home against an inferior Atlanta Hawks team. Yeah, I know Ben Simmons was Ben Simmons, but that's part of the loser culture that was built during this process era. You had a non-winning player in Ben Simmons. Now you have another non-winning player in James Harden. Embiid, when Embiid's great, he's great. He's energized. He's ready to go. But the second something goes wrong, the second things do not go in his way, this has been a theme with Embiid. He pouts, he whines, he complains, and he does not adjust. And that has been something that has been a big theme with the Sixers in this process era. They built all of these teams with all-stars and all defensive players and, like, all of these. I will say, like, this year from a talent standpoint, I believe the Sixers had all of the pieces of a championship team. They showed that during this series, that they have all of the pieces. What it came down to was your stars needed to show up, grab the bull by the horns, be championship level players, and they did not deliver. And Boston, a team that has built, and same with Miami. What's the difference between Miami? The Sixers are definitely more talented than this year's Miami Heat team. But the reason why Miami and Boston continue to dominate the Eastern Conference is because they establish a winning culture from top to bottom. And that is something that the Sixers are still trying to search and still trying to look for. And when you have a whole process where you are purposely tanking and throwing games, whether you want to admit it or not, that is creating a losing culture. And that is something where you need to find those players, the players that just have that it factor. And it's harder to find. But Embiid, who knows? Because he has the talent to do it. But this offseason, he is going to have to look at himself in the mirror. And whoever the Sixers get for their next head coach better be a guy that can instill and, enforce that winning culture. Some players, they just need that. And my only concern is if the Sixers re-sign James Harden, is he going to be willing, if we don't get a Mike D'Antoni, is he going to be willing to listen to a guy that is trying to instill a winning formula? And that is something that I am going to consistently be concerned with until I am proven otherwise. Because that has been the track record with James Harden. He has gone through numerous coaches. He has gone through numerous schemes. And other than Mike D'Antoni, he's bumped heads with the other coaches. And Embiid has now seen Brett Brown. He's now seen Doc Rivers. Now this is going to be his third coach. So when is it going to be, that depending on who we bring in, like are they going to be coachable? That is something that because of this series, I am now going to put into question. Before this series, I was not nervous at all about Embiid. But now after seeing this, like he's going to have to prove me wrong. And if he's proven wrong, I will come on this podcast and I will say, man, I was wrong. But right now, I'm going to compare Joel Embiid to like a Carmelo Anthony, a guy that is super talented, but in terms of him leading a team, there's question marks there. And it sucks because this was a great opportunity for him. Jason Tatum and the Celtics. Jason Tatum's only 25 too, by the way, and has been to 5 Eastern Conference Finals already at the age of 25. Embiid is going to be 30 this time next year. Like, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror as fans and be like, dang, like this was supposed to be his time. This was supposed to be his moment. And instead, Jason Tatum took over and took that moment.
Not only that, Josh, is that the whole reason of the process was for us to be in multiple championships, to win championships, be contenders year in and year out, have game-defining players, superstar talent. Josh, I'm going to read off some names to you, okay? And I want you, and I want the audience to realize the list of players I'm going to name, and you haven't even gotten past the second round. Okay, these are the players. Robert Covington, PJ Tucker, Tyrese Maxey, George Hill, Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, Ersan Ilyasova, Marco Bellinelli, JJ Redick, Markelle Fultz, Seth Curry, Jonathan Simmons, Andre Drummond, James Ennis, James Harden. A list of players that came in Philadelphia to help this man win. You still haven't gotten past the second round. So at what point are we going to stop coming up with excuses and say, no. The talent has been there for Embiid. He's not getting these guys over the hump. Embiid has yet to grab the bull by the horns and take control, be a leader. Embiid hasn't done that yet. I just listed off a bunch of players. And you know what? Honestly, let me sit here and say, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 players on that list have either won a championship, been on a championship team, played in the conference finals, and hold on. I'm sorry, I just had a brain fart. Yeah, been to a conference finals, played in a championship, and won on a championship roster. 4 out of the players I just named, they all came here to help Joel Embiid get there. Joel Embiid hasn't done it yet. So at one point, are we going to stop saying it's everybody else? No, it's you now. You're the main guy. This is your team. So at this point, I'm just okay. I'm at the point where this is Joel Embiid. This is who he is. Is he content with just the MVP? Because we haven't seen him cry and groan and moan about not making it to the NBA Finals. But we've seen him cry, moan, and groan about not winning the MVP. Shoot, I was firm on no. Embiid is way better than Jokic. Embiid's a better player. No, Jokic is better. Jokic is a better player than Embiid. I can't sit on the pedestal anymore for Embiid about that. This is a guy that averages a triple-double. Not only that, and this is the biggest thing, Jokic makes players around him better. Embiid doesn't make the players around him better. So at one point, are we gonna just say, you know what? Maybe this guy is maxed out. Maybe this team is maxed out. Because you brought up that Mike D'Antoni as a possible candidate, if James Harden was to stay here. Well, what are you going to get from James Harden? Because when we see Mike D'Antoni and James Harden, that was prime year James Harden. That's MVP. That's going and putting up 60 in 5-6 straight games. That's MVP Harden from 6, 7, 8 years ago. The Harden he's not that Harden anymore. So why are we going to continue to strap up the same boot and expect different results? What's going to change? To me, this team is maxed out. To me, this player in Joel Embiid is maxed out. He's probably just content with winning MVP. Joel Embiid, this is your legacy now. Do you want to go out as the guy who choked every year? Or do you not? Because it's gotten to the point where, you know what? You went through the process. It hasn't worked. The process failed. It's a failure. His nickname is the process. Everything that went on and that happened was supposed to be for you to put banners at Wells Fargo Center and to put rings on your finger. Hasn't done it. Hasn't gotten there. You have teams like the Atlanta Hawks that never processed. They've been to more conference finals in the last 5 years than you. 6, 7 years at that. You have teams like Milwaukee. Shoot, Milwaukee just won a championship 2021. And Giannis was not a top 3 pick. Giannis was not a top 10 pick. If I'm not mistaken, Giannis was drafted 15 by Milwaukee. They didn't tank in process. So at what point are we going to sit there and say, no, this isn't it? This we may have to go in a different direction here. And at what point are we going to say and sit here and hold Daryl Morey accountable? And you know what? To add on to that list of players, I forgot to add Al Horford. Al Horford was here. He's made it to a championship. He's been in the finals. But anyway, just to carry on, Daryl Morey has to be held accountable because he's the one who put this roster together. He's the one who came from Houston and turned it into the Philadelphia Rockets by going to get James Harden, PJ Tucker, Daniel House Jr. So at what point are we going to hold him accountable? You held Coach Rivers accountable. You gave him the boot. Okay, is Daryl Morey next? Because as much blame as people want to put on Doc Rivers played the hand that he was given. He played he played the hand the cards he was dealt. So by all means, you want to hold one person accountable, we need to hold everybody accountable. Daryl Morey has not done a good job at constructing this roster to be the best in their conference. Because you aren't better than Boston, you aren't better than Miami, you aren't better than Milwaukee. And Miami, this is their second Eastern Conference, no, their third Eastern Conference Finals in the last 3-4 years. They went last year, the bubble year, and this year. So, and they didn't go through a rebuild. Shoot, if you want to go on paper, you're far ahead, talent-wise, are better than Miami. Miami's doing this with one superstar. You know what? Is Jimmy Butler a superstar? That's I'm gonna say yes. Jimmy Butler's a superstar. So you're doing this with one superstar, one all-star, and a bunch of role players. Undrafted role players at that. Players like Duncan Robinson that was at the end of the bench to begin the season, all the way through the season. Now look where Miami is. But you know why? Because they have a leader. Look at the 4 teams left in the NBA. They all have leaders. They all have a guy that can grab the bull by the horns and take over. They all have a guy that can throw the team on their shoulders and take the game over. Philly doesn't have that. And again, I'm going to reiterate, this team is maxed out. They're not going to get much better than this. And you're talking about going out to go get Damian Lillard. What assets do you have to get Damian Lillard? What assets do you have? Because if I could recall, Daryl Morey traded away all your assets to get role players now and James Harden for what, another second round exit? So what do you have to go get Damian Lillard? What do you have to go get any superstar at this point? You don't have nothing. All of that's gone. So I'm in favor of letting. I don't want to let Embiid go. I love Embiid. As much as I'm saying all of this about Embiid and questioning his leadership and who he is as a player and his legacy, I don't want to see him go. He's gave me a good 4 or 5 years of great basketball. So, but it's time to turn a corner and it's time to flip over a page. It's time to do so. So if that includes Embiid having to go, PJ Tucker, James Harden, and Tobias, by all means, I'm in favor of it. You got to do what you got to do. I'm in favor of keeping, paying, and building around Tyrese Maxey. And I will say he's not a number one. I believe every number one on a team has to be a superstar, but he's a number 2 to me in my eyes. He's only 22 years old. He can be an all-star in years to come. Every single year he's jumped to another level. He's gotten better, and that's the route I'm going to have to go.
I will say this. So like I know and I agree, like this season, I think the reason why, like it hurts so much more this season is because we seen Embiid all year be a leader. When we needed a bucket, he was one of the most clutchest players in the year this year. I believe he was second behind De'Aaron Fox for like clutch player of the year award. Like we've seen him this year grab the bull by the horns when we need it. And what makes this moment suck even more is that now is when we needed it the most. We don't need it in January and in February. We need it in April. We need it in May, where we need you to step up. And for him, like he's been injured every postseason. I know he's been playing on another tear, but that's also, if he's good enough to play, then we can't use that as an excuse anymore. And I just think this is something where we have now reached a breaking point with him. For years in his career as the Sixers, we've always been on the defense with him. We've always been, like, well, this needed to happen, or, Ben Simmons, or, because the Ben Simmons situation was terrible. It was. Like, he flat out, like, he quit on the team. And for years, that has been the excuse. And now this is the first off season, and this is the first playoff run where this one's on Embiid. And now we are starting to question everything because as fans, it's like I said, it's 10-year anniversary from when the process started. So we got to look at Embiid, our leader, and we got to question his leadership. This because he gave us the reason to. Game 6 was his moment to, all year you've been carrying us, carry us now. Whether we want to nitpick James Harden gave you 2 40-point nights and won 2 games for you. We needed that one game where Embiid just dominated and dropped 40. He didn't have that this single postseason. He hasn't had that the past couple postseasons. And I know you can say injuries are a part of it, but we have to look at it and be like, look, man, you are our best player. Every series, your best player needs to have a moment. No one else is making shots, but they drop 40 and your team wins. Or even if he would have dropped 40 and we lost, at least we're saying, like Embiid gave it his all. And and that never happened this postseason. So now we're questioning everything, which makes so much sense.
And not to cut you off in any sense, but beginning of the series before the series even started, I took Boston in 5. I was wrong about that. Then I said Boston in 6. I was wrong about that. I would sit there and say I was wrong about that, right? But here's why I was so against Philly in this series. Because the 4 games that you had against Boston, they hadn't showed me that this team is capable of, again, I'm going to say, grabbing the bull by the horns and winning a game. They didn't show me that was possible until game 4 when you played Boston. Now, I think Embiid had 50 and there was no Jaylen Brown, right? And I was so hesitant. I doubted them and like, wow, you know what? The series came and you're up 3-2. And I'm sitting here, okay, you know what? I may have to eat my words. I did say Boston in 5. If I got to eat my words, so be it, because Philly moved on and I look like the fool. But fourth quarter, game 6 and game 7 showed me why and showed everybody why I doubted this team. I did, and why I was so hesitant on Philly has a chance. Because I said that Philly doesn't have a chance. I said that. But game 6 but the fourth quarter of game 6 and game 7 showed me and showed everybody else why I sat there and said this team doesn't have a chance. Game 6, Boston hand wrapped it to you. Put the bow tie. All you had to do was just write to Philly from Boston here. You choked the game away. Game 6, here in Philly, you're up 83-81. You choked that. You go back to Boston, you're up 12 at one point in the second quarter. You choked that too. So, yeah, this is why I said Philly don't stand a chance and why I didn't believe they can win this series at all. That's why. So, yes, game 6 of the fourth quarter of game 6, let me reiterate. The fourth quarter of game 6 and game 7 showed everybody why I was so, and I don't like Philly. I don't like this at all. So, there. That's why.
I agree, man. And I will say, like, when it comes to this podcast, again, like, the Sixers are going to have a very big offseason coming up. And I think just to conclude this big topic and this is, because the Sixers, they just lost a couple days ago, as I'm looking at some of the head coaching candidates. And according to Adrian Wojnarowski, the Sixers, now that they fired Doc Rivers, there's some big names that are going to be expected. The Sixers are going to interview. So you got Mike Budenholzer, Sam Cassell, Mike D'Antoni, Nick Nurse, Frank Vogel, and Monty Williams. So, like, the Sixers are going to have a lot of big decisions to make this offseason. Decision number 1 starts with coach, because you want to hire that coach early so that way, your team and your coach and your new coach can get on the same page right away. So that's the first big move. The second is Tobias Harris's contract. because of Tobias Harris's contract, that has limited us in ways, to like not get like some added depth. Um, if there's a way in which we can trade Tobias this offseason to get two wings, for depth and can give us, those points and can fit better with Embiid and Harden if Harden were to stay, those are some big moves that are coming up. So Dante, just my next question just for you, before like we wrap this up and do a little Eagles discussion to wrap up our podcast, because we got to end it on a good note. Um, who do you feel like that would be the best case scenario for the Sixers to hire as the next head coach? And do you think Tobias Harris's contract is will he be traded in the offseason?
To answer your second question, I think there was too much smoke when Daryl Morey came here about Tobias Harris. So yes, I think Tobias, now that his contract is more expendable, he's making 20 mil within the upcoming year. His contract is much more better for a team to take on. So I do believe that Tobias Harris will be moved on from and will be traded in the offseason. But to answer your question, for your first question about who do I believe may step in, I'm gonna be very honest with you. The guy I want is not on is his name is not on that list of players of coaches that were just fired. It's not Monty. It's not Mike Budenholzer. It's not Mike D'Antoni. It's not Nick Nurse. It's none of them. It's a guy that is from the Philly area. He's won multiple championships. And the guy is already, as young as he is, in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. That might tell you something. I want Jay Wright here. I want Jay Wright to come into Philly. And if you are gonna keep this team and you do need a guy who is the perfect chef, I believe is the perfect chef, Jay Wright. Jay Wright has proven he can win. Now it might be at the collegiate level, but it is what it is. Boston took a chance on Steve Bradley. Was that his name, right? Steve.
Brad Stevens.
Oh,
He,
Brad
he
Stevens.
was
Okay.
now.
So
Sorry to
yes,
interrupt. Brad Stevens is now I believe, the general manager of the
yes,
Boston Celtics, who got Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon in back-to-back years. So he has done a great job in that organization.
yes. So if anybody wanted to sit there and challenge me and say collegiate coaches don't work well on the NBA level, well, that's not true. Because Brad Stevens has shown otherwise, and Jay Wright has won multiple championships at Villanova. Who is an all-time great coach, and he turns boys into men. He creates leaders on a team. So with that being said, I mean, if you want to give one more crack at it, that's the guy I'm going after. That's the guy I want to run my organization or be the face of the franchise or the face of this organization. It can't be Joel Embiid no more, because Joel Embiid has shown you his maxed out capability of being the face of the franchise. But if you want to give it one more crack, I'm all in on Jay Wright. Do what you got to do to get Jay Wright. These other coaches, I mean, don't get me wrong. Monty Williams, who just made it to the NBA Finals, I think it was 2021 when they lost to Milwaukee. Sorry, Nick Nurse, NBA, he made it. He's NBA Final champion. Mike Budenholzer, I think he got the short end of the stick, man. Especially if it's true that his brother passed away in that series against Miami. Giannis got hurt. Chris Middleton was hurt for a good portion of the year. With all of that being said, I mean, they still were the number one seed. And I mean, I understand they lost in the first round against Miami, but man, I don't know how much you can expect out of a guy that just lost his brother. Like, what are you expecting that man to be? If anything, his head's not there. His head's not in the game. He's not worried about coach. He's not worried about being on that sideline at that particular moment. If it's true, he hasn't come out to confirm it, but there are rumors going around. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know who it was that hopped on a podcast and said that his brother passed away. No, it was Darvin Ham. I think it was Darvin Ham the head coach of the LA Lakers went on a press conference, not a podcast, press conference, and he stated out there, yes, Mike Budenholzer lost his brother in that Miami series, so I believe he got the short end of the stick on that, man.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, like dream scenario, I would love Jay Wright, but who knows, because he's been so successful in the college in his college career that who knows if he wants to do coaching again. Like he created a really great program in Villanova. You see a lot of those guys now, Jalen Brunson now leading his team in New York, and like he's a winner. Josh Hart, he's another winner. Now I know New York was not able to get it done, but it was not because of Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart. In fact, the reason why New York, the Knicks took that extra umph from previous years is because of their acquisition of Josh Hart. So Jay Wright knows how to build a culture and knows how to build winners, and he could definitely be a culture center. But the thing is he going to want to get back into the coaching ranks again?
Yeah,
That's something.
the question
Yeah,
is that what he wants to do?
yeah.
Is that something he wants to pursue? You know what? I have a funny Jay Wright story too. I'm gonna share it with you guys. It was my junior year in high school. It might have been my junior year. No, I think it was my junior year in high school. Obviously, I was on the basketball team. We had a scrimmage at Villanova University where they would have their practice, the gym where Villanova holds their practices. And moments before the game, I had to run to the bathroom. I had to run to the restroom real quick. I had to take care of some business. And walking out the bathroom, long behold, I bump into Jay Wright. So I said, "Oh, shoot, coach, how you doing, coach? You mind if I to get a quick picture with you real quick?" So he takes the picture with me. He's coming up to watch the game. But this is where it gets funnier. Um, we played the math with a Catholic, and anybody that knows high school basketball or is into it or follows it knows the math of Catholic is a powerhouse. And long behold, who do we play against? Former number one overall pick Markelle Fultz. And what makes the story even funnier, they had a kid that came off the bench that was rock solid, huge. This guy was huge. I didn't know who he was, didn't know anything about the guy. Didn't even know who he was up until he got drafted. And I'm not talking about Fultz, I'm talking about somebody else. Chase Young was on that team. Defensive end for the Washington Commanders. So that's what makes the funny even story. And we're sitting here playing against Markelle Fultz and Chase Young at Villanova University, and I bump into Jay Wright moments before the game starts. It was just a whirlwind. It was just a whirlwind story. Like everything just connected. Like, okay, we didn't know Markelle Fultz. And first of all, Markelle Fultz didn't even jump onto the scene until his senior year of high school. That's when he really jumped onto the scene. So it's just funny how it all came full circle with Markelle Fultz being drafted here at Philly. Chase Young is drafted by the Commanders. At the time, we're still called the Redskins, and who is a division rival of the Philadelphia Eagles. Bumping into Jay Wright, who is one of my all-time favorite college coaches, 2 national championships, produced players like Dante DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson,
Kyle Lowry.
Kyle Lowry, Reggie Redding, Mikal Bridges, Damir Cosby Roundtree. So these are players that he's just, that I can think off the top of my head that, wow, like Jay Wright's the real deal. Jay Wright knows what the heck he's doing. So that's the reason why I want Jay Wright here in Philly.
I know. I honestly believe he would be the savior of Philadelphia basketball. He definitely would be if he were to come in. I mean, one can dream, so hopefully he can. But Dante, I know our podcast, we're reaching an hour. Would you like to save our Eagles schedule prediction for another future episode, or would you like to get into that a little bit tonight?
We could probably save that for our next episode and just deal with that. I mean, if we're going to discuss the Eagles, I think we got to give Eagles our full podcast attention.
True. Oh yeah, I completely agree. And the reason why I even thought about the Eagles was just to shed some light. I don't know if you've seen, just for like a quick couple minutes, I don't know if you've seen like Carter and Smith's rookie training camp. Man, the way how they're pushing the sled and stuff. Carter looks explosive, man. They both just look like explosive athletes, which is something very, very exciting to see. I don't know if you caught the video
Um,
at all.
no, I didn't catch that in particular. But now that gives me something to go look up now. I'm gonna go to Eagles Twitter. I'm gonna go to the Eagles Twitter page and look
Yeah.
it up.
Yeah, bro. Because I was just gonna say, man, like as bad of a culture the Sixers are right now, man, the Eagles have something special brewing, and it all
Yeah.
starts again with what we talked about, right? Leadership. Jalen Hurts in his press conferences, that is a leader. Look at his press conferences and look at Embiid's. Hurts is not
But
bashing
you
teammates.
know, but you know, Josh, honestly, just to sit there and say, just to add, just to give you this, like, just to give you this train of thought, right? Jalen Hurts walked into a locker room full of leaders. I mean, when he got there, you had Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. He walked Darius Slay, so he walked into a room with leaders there, and it only grew to him becoming a better leader than what he is now. And as far as when Joel Embiid got there, there were no leaders there. There were no vets there to grab him and take him under the wing and guide him and show him right from wrong in the NBA. There's your biggest difference.
True, I completely agree. And let's be honest here. Like before the early 2000s, the Eagles had a very up and down culture, and it took a coach in Andy Reid to come in and instill a winning culture. Because you got to remember, Andy Reid came from Green Bay, and who knows, maybe that's what the Sixers need. Is a coach that can come in like a Jay Wright, to and just instill that winning culture. Because all it takes is one person to completely change and shift a whole identity. The Eagles learned that firsthand with Andy Reid. Maybe the Sixers, that's just something that they're just lacking. So hopefully the Sixers can find that over this offseason. And maybe this time next year, we're talking about the Sixers getting over this hump and getting to an Eastern Conference final. One can hope and one can dream, but we shall see. But the main takeaway from this podcast is the Sixers have a lot of work to do. But Dante, before we wrap up, do you have any closing remarks? I really enjoyed your story too about Jay Wright and stuff. Any closing remarks before we wrap everything up?
Well, first things first, I appreciate it. Secondly, this here is, I'm not sure if you guys can see it fully. This here is a cup of wine, and this is what the Sixers make me do. And I'm not sure if you guys can see my banner, but I am a depressed Sixers fan right now. And just to end it on the basketball note, I'm gonna take the Celtics 6-6, Lakers in 7, Philadelphia, get your shit together. This is what they make me do.
Yeah, I actually agree with your predictions. I have a weird feeling that LeBron gets his fifth this year. Something's just telling me that that's going to happen. I mean, we'll see though, because Jokic has really been proving everyone wrong in these playoffs. So that series is going to go down to the wire. I think that's going to be a 7-game series. But if the Lakers get over the Nuggets, I just think LeBron has that block over Boston, and I think LeBron gets his fifth if that were the case. But we shall see. But I just want to say, Dante, thank you for another podcast. Thank you, everyone, tuning in and listening to Swoop Podcast. Dante, even though the Sixers lost, you got to give me that swoop for me, and we'll wrap everything up.
Well, Josh, I appreciate it. Everybody, make sure y'all hit the like button, subscribe, share, turn on the notifications. Whatever it is you got to do, go follow us on. What are we on, bro? I know
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Spotify, Apple, everything that's out there. Josh handles all of the social media accounts. So just make sure y'all go follow, hit the subscription, turn on the like, and whatever it is you got to do, just do it. All right. Swoop.
I love it, guys. So thank you guys again for listening to Swoop Podcast. And again, me and Dante will figure out the next time we record, definitely do some like Eagle releases and talk about some Phillies on the next podcast too. Cause I know I've talked about, every 2 weeks, it's a good evaluation period to see how the Fightins are doing too. So have a wonderful night, guys. Stay safe. And thank you guys for tuning to another podcast with your hosts, Josh Sanchez and Dante Fantuzzi.